Mark Swift, screenwriter extraordinaire of this picture that you're enjoying, Friday the 13th, 2009.
And Damian Shannon. Simple. Oddly enough, we were skiing and we got a phone call,
That's
right? We got a phone call from someone who worked at Platinum Dunes and said, he knew us from previous something, I forget what it was, and he's like, look, I'm putting your name into my bosses at Platinum Dunes, and I just wanted to make sure you guys are into it. Friday the 13th, what do you think? And we were like, hell yeah.
Yeah, and then after we had our initial conversations with Brad and Drew, and they were like, oh, these are the guys. You know, we still have to pitch 2 studios, and you know, you don't want to do multiple pitches, so they actually did it in one big room. And wouldn't you know it, this is true, there was 13 people around the table. And it was people like Michael Bay and Brad Weston and Brad Shea, Bob Shea, excuse me. But basically every heavy hitter with the 2 studios. And I remember we just pitched the shit out of it. And one of the things that we were really excited about was the extended opening sequence. You know, it was kind of a radical idea at the time, you know, to set up a whole cast of characters, you know, spend 18, 19 minutes of screen time getting to know them and then kill them all. And so what we described it as, it's a roller coaster ride. You know, you're going to the top and all of a sudden the bottom's going to drop out. And they were kind of excited about it. And I think that, you know, we sort of told what we were inspired by, which was Psycho. You know, we were like, we wanted that same feeling for the audience. You know, when those first audiences saw Psycho, they just couldn't believe it. And then, you know, when we saw the movie opening weekend, I mean, it really did deliver on that. I think when everybody dies in the end and then the title card comes up and
23 minutes in.
23 minutes into the movie, I mean, I think nobody could believe it. And I mean, there were huge cheers and screams and shouts. So that was very satisfying.
Absolutely. First of all, we're huge fans of the genre and we're huge fans of the franchise, so we know it. And most of the time, actually, they deferred to us. And which was, you know, we felt great about, and we just started coming up with what are the kills that we're going to celebrate from the old movies and put a little twist or a little spin on, and then come up with our own fresh new ideas. And we pitched the general concept and then the big highlight pitches. And I remember the first big room when we're pitching to everybody in New Line and Paramount, and Michael Bay is there, we start pitching the movie. And then Michael Bay, just in the middle of our pitch, is like, pitch him the sleeping bag kill. Pitch him the sleeping bag. Just cuts us off, get right to that sleeping bag.
Pitch a sleeping bag.
Oh yeah, that's what I say?
Which, yeah, exactly what you said.
Okay.
And then we did that. But sometimes, you know, we would do things and they didn't know what we were doing. I remember when we were on set and somebody came to Brad and, you know, he's looking at a piece of paper, he's like, did you guys know that there's 13 kills in the movie? We were like, yeah, we know. 13. And he was like, oh, pretty good, pretty good. We were on set for that, and I remember he was getting a nap, and already glued to his eye was part of the poker.
The handle.
The handle to the fireplace poker, and he's kind of trying to sleep with this big thing glued to his eye just for hours, just trying to get a little sleep.
I think I took a picture of that.
Yeah, because we were shooting, you know, constantly, and then when they're at the door, you know, you got to do it over and over again, and I mean, it was pretty brutal. Now we wrote that actually a little even gorier in the screenplay, but
yeah, in the screenplay.
And we complained. We were like, "Where's the gore?"
Yeah, yeah.
And they were like, "Dummies, we would have to wipe it down every single time. That takes time. We don't have the time for it. We'll add it in post." And I don't think they added it in post.
No, but
I
think there's a little CG blood that flies through.
Yeah, but what you really wanted is all the way through, and then like a spray.
Still has notes. We chose to make this one in modern day because when the first movie came out for us when we were kids, it was modern day and it reflected the time, right? And it would be so we wanted to make something relevant to the young audience now, or 2009, and I think was what was exciting for us. And you know, for us, you know, the 1980 version, of course, was nostalgic. And now, you know, 15 years later, we hope that the 2009 one is nostalgic for them, for the kids who saw it then.
We had our nostalgia. I mean, looking back at the 80s, you know, now, you know, someone that saw this movie when they were 18, you know, they're 33 now. You know, hopefully this will be their nostalgia. Did I do the math right on that?
I doubt it.
No, I don't, probably not. But yeah, so I think it's sort of better to make it, you know, modern. And then as it ages, then hopefully that'll be, you can still have nostalgia, because not everybody wants to see the 80s constantly over and over, besides us. I mean, we love the 80s, but time to grow up, people. Time to grow up.
Well, we felt like, first of all, we needed some kind of emotional engine to drive this movie. Besides, because the first 23 minutes were spent on characters that supposedly died. Now, so how do we start it back up? So we connected it to someone searching for someone, and that was Clay Miller searching for his sister, Whitney Miller.
Here's some trivia. Miller, who do we name it after?
The original screenwriter, of course.
Victor Miller.
Victor Miller. We had to have
settle the lawsuit, Victor. Or maybe they need to settle with you. I don't know. We need a new movie. Please, dude. There's too much legal shenanigans.
That's right.
We love Victor Miller.
We do.
So we wanted to honor him with the character name.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's ever pointed that out before.
Well, it's a bit of an Easter egg, which for some, that Easter egg is actually the emotional engine that drives it for them.
That's right. But for us, we knew that the movie needed some emotional core besides Jason just hacking up kids, which we do love. But, I think that we hadn't really seen a brother searching for his sister in this particular franchise.
Since part 4.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, okay, well then we're not that original. We definitely wanted to make reference to the older movies, which we love.
There's that one great kill where Jason wraps his victim in the sleeping bag and slams her against a tree and kills her, which we loved. So we're like, what can we do to kind of up that and celebrate that?
Yeah, and we, have little Easter eggs all the way through, Mark's wheelchair, in the tunnels, we just like to have lots of little stuff, but at the same time, then you want to have new ones. And I think that one of the things we wanted to do was get away from the machete as much as we can. I think that sometimes that fell back on that too easily. So we were very excited about a bow and arrow. We were very excited about the axe. And sometimes they would want to lose those things. We'd have to push, like, no, we got to see Jason throw an axe. So you find yourself like fighting for these different things, of things that we as fans wanted to see Jason do.
And Michael Bay just loved that sleeping bag kill. It is brutal in the movie, and he dug it. So
yeah, here's a story that I probably shouldn't tell, but come on. So you're writing the script, and they told us Michael wants to see pages, and that's not something that we normally do. We don't turn over screenplays while we're working on them, and we just kept resisting. We're like, listen, it's not done, blah blah blah, and they're like, you guys don't get it. You definitely need to show Michael something. So we're like, okay, and so we gave him first 20 pages.
The opening up to the credits.
And he loved it so much. He's like, leave him alone, leave him alone. And then we heard the movie was greenlit and we weren't even done yet. I mean, he was so enthused because that opening on the page, I mean, it was really good. And the sleeping bag was a part of it, and Michael really liked it. Michael was always super cool to us. And then when it was done, we did sit in a room with him and go through the whole script, page by page. And he had really smart comments, and he was very helpful.
Yeah, and by the way, they all made us feel very comfortable about the process, and it gave us extra confidence.
We saw early dailies of the inside of that sleeping bag when she was on fire, and I'm being completely serious. They had to cut it way down because the original stuff was so brutal. It was excruciating. We had a line in the script that when the bag finally, the bottom of it came out, that she fell off and the meat slid off her arm like rotisserie. And I was like, first of all, I was a little ashamed that that we wrote that. But when they showed it to us, and I'm like, oh no, that's horrible. Yeah. And they actually had to tone it way down for the movie.
I think they darkened it up too.
Yeah, because it was absolutely brutal.
For me, one scene that I really enjoyed seeing come to, or one kill that I really enjoyed seeing come to life is Richie.
Oh yeah.
Which is also very brutal. He gets the bear trap.
Yeah.
You got that leg, you see the leg, but then
brutal.
Jason comes over there, and Derek does such a brutal move when he puts that machete in his head, his eyes cross, that he takes his foot and puts it on the guy's head and yanks the machete out.
The foot, I know this for a fact, was Derek's idea. Like, he would always add little touches like that. The foot, because he's like, this is what I would do in real life. I'd use my foot. And we're like, yeah, that's awesome.
He does a lot of woodwork.
Does a lot of woodwork. He could carve anything. Just give him a machete and some time.
We were a little nervous about giving those first 30 pages, but we were also very confident in them, and we had our managers read them. We had a few fans of in our inner circle read them, and everybody loved it. And it was actually really tried to make it scary on the page, and I think we were very successful. And I think that's why that opening really works so well. It has a nice dynamic. It's got a nice push. It's got a lot going on. We knew that he couldn't just use a machete. We wanted to see a variety. Jason always uses a variety of instruments to dismember these people, and so we had to reach into the bag of tools, and he comes up with the screwdriver for the Aaron Yoo kill.
Yeah, and I think it was more about us. What do we want to see Jason do? You know, we really wanted to see him on the roof. You know, we had never seen him set somebody up like that before. So that was something that we really believed in. And like we said, this isn't a big budget movie. I mean, our budget is probably less than the catering bill on the smallest Marvel movie. So, you know, it's all about days and time. And so every day that we were there, you know, they were like, well, yesterday we were behind, so today we got to cut. And so, you know, you're losing, you know, character development, you're losing dialogue. And then one of the things when we got there, they're like, we're getting rid of the roof.
And for us, that was an iconic shot, which kind of was inspired by the shot in Jason Lives, where he's standing on top of that Winnebago on its side, it's on fire, and he's standing
Part
there.
6.
It's a beautiful kind of image. This is how we came up with him standing on the roof.
So we were like, look, Brad, Drew, we need this, man. We need the roof thing, you know. And it's like in the middle of the night, they're running out of light, and then they were like, all right, go talk to Marcus. So we went over to Marcus and we pitched that. We were like, Marcus, you got to have this. Well, we pitched about how passionate we were. This shows Jason's intelligence. He's throwing the axe. He's using the kid as bait. He's on the roof. And Marcus was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And then, you know, of course, you know, nothing is easy in movies. So they have to build an entire bit of scaffolding that they didn't see that they had to do before. And now the sun's coming up, and we're like, oh my God, did we just destroy this production by pushing for the...
They had like 4 minutes to get that shot because the sky was turning blue. And Derek Mears, who was amazing in this film.
He's the best. Let's talk about Mears later.
But he had to nail it and give you that physicality on top of the roof. And he did it. And just as he turned, literally the sun came up.
So it's over, you know, and everybody's like, oh my God, was that worth it for those two nerds that were really pushing for the roof thing? And I went over to Brad and I was like, Brad, that shot's going to be in the trailer. So cut to a year later, and the first trailer comes out, and it's in it. And Brad literally called my phone. He's like, "You were right. It's in the trailer." He's like, "I'm glad you fought for it." And I was like, "Yeah, it makes me feel good."
Yeah, you can have writers on set. Sometimes they help.
Sometimes they help.
The mask is really a global icon. I mean, people around the world recognize that mask. So it has that kind of power, almost in Greek myth kind of power, first of all. It's a symbol of horror. You know, every Halloween, you see this mask everywhere, little kids wearing this thing coming up to your door and knocking. Some of these kids have no idea what this mask even means. It's even bigger than the movies, I would say.
On set, they would carry it around in a steel case, and this like James Bond, like you always knew where the mask was. But, you know, for us as fans, we wanted to see the sack too. You know, we were like, that was really important to us. You know, we wanted to see that. We wanted to see him discovering the mask, even though, in my opinion, it's really a sequel. You know, he's worn the mask before, but I don't want to start any controversy.
Disagree.
It's a sequel.
Disagree.
It's a sequel. But the mask, I mean, for us, yeah, you kind of feel it. And I think that, you know, for the makeup guys and the effects guys, I mean, everyone gets their sort of crack at redesigning it. So I think that that's something that always excites the production. You know, they're going to put their stamp on it. You know, is the axe mark going to be there from earlier?
Yeah.
You know, all that kind of stuff.
It's also a staple of the franchise where he has this mask on and it creates this kind of sense of mystery of what's behind the mask. And in most of the movies where he's got that hockey mask on, we reveal him at the end. The mask comes off when you get to see what Jason really looks like. So we did that as well. We knew we didn't want to show him too much because the imagination is so much more powerful than what we could actually show. But in the end, when he's sinking into the water, we wanted a quick glimpse of what his actual face looked like. And as well, when he finds the mask for the first time and he looks into that cracked mirror,
that was
and
something...
we see pieces kind of fracture of his face before he puts that on. And that's kind of the only kind of real character moment for him in the movie.
I think there's a few. Finding the mask was a reshoot. We had a different kill. I think that they've released some of that footage. There's a character named Donnie who was trying on the mask because he found it. There's some ice skates next to it. and he's like smoking weed like through the mask. And Jason's not a weed farmer, by the way. I want to just clear that up right now if anybody was wondering. Let's just get that out of your mind. It's not a weed farmer. But it didn't quite cut together the way we had, envisioned it. And so we wrote a lot of different versions of how does Jason find that mask, and then what they use with the trunk. We wrote that. And then
you could argue amongst yourself if any of them were any good.
Yeah, I'd still like another crack at it.
Derek Mears, by the way, we're so lucky to have him on our movie. He is just this incredible physical actor, and he was able to sort of emote this awesome physicality throughout the movie. He's, for me, probably the most vicious kind of feral Jason that's ever been.
We're biased, but Derek Mears is the greatest Jason of all time, and I stand by that. He was incredible. I mean, there's an intelligence behind the mask, but in a way that's you're kind of fucked up and afraid of it. He's, like Damien said, the way he knows how to use his body. For instance, that moment at the end of the opening sequence where he's running at Whitney and he's going to do it with the machete. I think originally the way they had kind of staged that was he was going off her, so he wouldn't put the actor or hurt anybody. And Derek was like, I can pull it back. I mean, I can get right up to her and not. And they were like, okay. And he did. I mean, that's just how in control he is.
And that is a great, great moment in the movie. And another thing about him is surprising that there's a moment that I love, which is you see his anger so clearly in the scene when he's tossing those canoes. Awesome. And you see his strength.
And I feel like that was Derek, like on the day, like, I think I'm just going to fucking toss these things. And it was awesome.
Yeah. Amazing.
He's so good, though. So good.
Yeah, and by the way, just a sweetheart of a fellow.
Derek Mears is the nicest guy in the world. I know that he has interacted with fans so much. I mean, he goes to all those conventions, and obviously he's been also a Predator, and I mean everything else. I think that he's one of the most in-demand kind of guys out there right now.
And just a huge fan of the franchise. He loved Jason.
He knows everything about Jason. He knows everything about it. He would like ask us questions about like what we thought about certain things from old movies. Like, he's just the best.
We first met Marcus at Platinum Dunes, and he really enjoyed the script. He was really excited about it, and we just started, talking it through with him. He sent us all his notes, and it was really a pleasure to collaborate with him. He had tons of ideas, and what was great about him, I think, is how collaborative he was, but also just the way he brought this visual quality to this franchise, which we'd never seen before.
Yeah, and he fought for the movie. I mean, sometimes, when there wasn't enough money for something, he was very passionate about it. I mean, he was trying to make the best movie that he could, and he has a great team. I mean, he brought in Daniel Pearl, who shot the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I mean, he had a great crew, and the way he sort of marshaled them on set, when we were watching Marcus, he's just completely in control, knows exactly how he wants it to look, and it looks beautiful. I mean, the movie, he did an amazing job.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and how you're creating this new Jason, it starts first on paper, right? We write it. We create our version. Then it goes through Marcus and Daniel Pearl's lens. Then it lands directly on Derek Mears and what he does in front of the camera. So it's a collaboration of all of us to get to that final point. But in the end, the living, breathing Jason was Derek Mears.
Yeah, but that's a good lesson for you kids. Movie making, it's very collaborative. Very
Absolutely.
Collaborative. A lot of stuff had to be cut for cost, and we understand that, obviously. I mean, this is not an unlimited budget, and they don't have an unlimited amount of time. But originally, our ending was much bigger, and that involved Jenna's death, which I think was sort of a great shock for the audience. We always sort of built her as being what you would think would be the final girl, and we were very excited about killing her early, because we knew that that would be a big surprise for the audience, and we always want to sort of manipulate audience expectation. But she was originally involved in a much bigger sequence.
Yes, we had 3 different versions of how we killed Jenna, all of them supposedly a big shock. And the first one was very elaborate. As we mentioned before, it was supposed to be a mining town. And so the end came at this cliff where there was this pulley system kind of left over from the old mining days, and they kind of get tangled up on it, and Jenna gets hanging on one side of it,
and Jason's on the
Jason's
other.
upside down, swinging his machete, and
They're kind of
somehow
going like this, like
they're getting
chopping
pulled up
at
and
her.
down, and she gets off, and she's free, and Jason's up there, and Jason slices the rope, comes flying down, and plants the machete in her head.
And so then we have a moment where she turns right was it Clay with her?
Yeah.
At that point? So she turns right to him and she goes, "Do you hear a ringing sound?" And then like blood starts going down her face, and then she does a header off the cliff. And everybody loved it. And we were talking to Michael, and he's like, "Oh man, that was so great. Yeah, we definitely can't afford that. Let's go ahead and lose that."
He also said, and by the way, I couldn't even shoot that.
And we're like, "Michael, come on, you could shoot it."
He would have shot the shit out of that. That's the truth.
So then we came up with the school bus, which is in the movie, but that originally involved Jenna's death. And it was a little more elaborate. She actually gets a hold of an old fire extinguisher and fights Jason with it at some point. And it's great visuals because she's like in the bus and he's walking on top of the windows because it's turned on its side. And it was pretty elaborate. Now they saved that for then
Yes, for Amanda Righetti's
to
character
walk
Whitney
through later.
to escape, and yeah.
And so basically we knew, now we need something for Jenna. And it just became, small, because she's just in the tunnel. But we knew it still got to our essence, which is we wanted to shock the audience. And I think I just saw the other day, it was like the 20 horror deaths that, we really wished hadn't happened, like, that we wanted back.
Success.
And like Jenna was like number 2, like, or characters that didn't deserve their death. And I was like, well, then mission accomplished. We wanted you to fall in love with this first crew. And the other thing we really wanted to do was an old school campfire tale, which we hadn't seen in a while on Friday the 13th. That's something that we always really liked. To tell the myth of Jason again. And then to pull the rug out from the audience like Psycho. Like when I saw that when I was a kid, I was like, oh my God, there's this character, and we take all this time and you establish and then gone. And I've always, Psycho and Hitchcock in general it's just a huge influence on us. So that was our direct ripoff.
We were always very careful about understanding, because we did Freddy versus Jason, the rules. And in this case, the rules of the Friday the 13th franchise. And we knew you got to service those rules, but you also, in order to show something fresh, you have to break some of the rules. And one of those big rules we broke is that Jason actually kidnapped someone. That's never happened before. And in this movie, we thought this would be a great emotional hook. There's a good reason why he does it. Yes, he never did it before, but we have a great reason that it's rooted in character, because it comes from those movies where Jason, in fact, was tricked by his love for his mother, where the one character puts on the sweater and starts talking, to him as his mother. And we thought, this woman, Amanda Righetti, who plays Whitney,
Looks great.
and we say, you look at the little locket and you see that she looks like Jason's mother. And that's kind of our explanation and kind of our way to create this emotional engine where Clay is looking for his sister and she's actually still alive.
You also have to know the rules of the franchise itself. There's certain things that are going to be in the DNA of Friday the 13th that need to be in there. There needs to be sex, there needs to be drugs, there needs to be, all that stuff that sort of make the franchise what it is. But you also want to subvert expectation, and you want to use those elements in ways that you haven't seen before.
Absolutely. So this movie starts in exploitation, right? Especially the sex. So we knew we had to have a sex scene, of course. But what would our sex scene be? What new element could we have? And we came up with this idea that we thought was great, and we pitched it to everybody very early on, and everybody seemed to dig it. But what it was the sex scene, the famous sex scene from Friday the 13th, 2009. It goes on very long, but there's a reason, because what it originally was is they're having sex, right? It's Trent and Bree, and they're in the foreground. And in the background, there's a big picture window. And back there, we see Whitney has escaped from Jason's lair, and she's stumbling and scrambling, trying to get to Trent's cabin and bang on the door for help or bang on the window. And we see it between the movement of
But they're a little
two
busy.
bodies.
They're not looking out the window.
So you see them as they move. You're getting little glimpses of her getting closer and closer. But then you see Jason right behind her in hot pursuit. So we're having this kind of climactic moment, if you'll permit me, and right before she bangs on the window, Jason grabs her and takes her back into the forest, just as they're
So it
finishing their
didn't really
business.
cut together. It didn't really work out. Like it was just never. We just couldn't pull it off.
Yeah, we
in
never
the
saw
making of it.
the images,
so-
but apparently it didn't
And so
work.
that stuff got removed, and they just kept a super long sex scene.
For us, what we always try to do when we're working on a franchise, pre-existing franchise that has rules and followers and what certain things, tropes that people love, is we try to comment on it, you know, and make it relevant to the time that it's being made in. So right now, like for example, the sex, which I don't think is well received now. It would be a little trickier. We would figure out a way to comment on it and do something different.
Yeah, I think all male nudity this time. That would be the way to go. Just like we did in Baywatch. To a certain extent, you don't want to completely reinvent the wheel. I think that Friday the 13th will always be a throwback. I think it'll stand the test of time simply because there's always going to be an audience for it. You know, I don't think Jason's ever going to die. I think he's definitely going to come back. Please. No, he will. Don't worry. He'll be back. He'll be back.
We can talk about a couple of our favorite kills. My favorite kill, or one of my favorite kills, is of course in the beginning with Mike and Whitney as they go and they discover Jason's house, his old place where he lives. And
Originally, they were going to find the shrine. We were going to do a little shout out to part 2. In the screenplay, it's the table, candles, head, and they were like, I don't think that they, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, they wouldn't have it like that. And I'm like, no, it's part 2. Just trust us. Just do it. And then Marcus, you know, when we saw the movie, we're like, well, why is her head in a wall? That's weird. But then when we actually saw what Marcus planned, I mean, it was pretty cool, pretty smart what he did, like having someone put their hand in there, they don't know what's in there.
yes, it created a lot of suspense. Like I see something in there and then the hand going there. I remember in the theater, that was probably the most suspenseful moment in the movie. And then of course he pulls it out and there's that shot, there's a bang, the door closes, then it goes off because that's when they know something's in here. The suspense is at a very high level, and my favorite kill happens right here when he's looking down underneath the door to see who's out there, but he doesn't come from the outside, he comes from underneath. And the machete's coming up, and Jason drags him down into that pit of hell, and you catch a glimpse of Jason's eye with that scary mask head, right? That sack. And for us, when we originally wrote this movie, this was the first actual glimpse you got of his head. So, and Marcus shot the shit out of it. It's a terrifying moment. It's one of my favorite kills.
Looks great.
I love it. And of course, that's also the hint of there's tunnels involved. There's something beneath the surface that provides some shelter for Jason.
I love the water ski kill because it's got a mix of everything. It's them having fun and the sunshine, and then the bow and arrow, which we were talking about earlier. Jason being a hunter, being feral, and being able to pull that off, and then the boat hitting her head. I mean, but one image that we always loved that we knew would sell the movie is a girl in a lake looking at the shore, and there's Jason.
What do you do?
And where are you going to go?
What do you do?
And we just knew that was such an iconic shot.
And Marcus nailed it.
Marcus nailed it.
And it's one of the big icons of the 2009
Yeah,
movie.
and it looks so good. You actually you bought a T-shirt with that image on it for me.
That's right.
For my birthday. That was really nice of you. I love that shirt.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, and it was a kill we came up with, so why not?
There's another kill that was slightly subverted because of time or money or whatever it was, which I love this kill. It's when Trent, the classic asshole, you always have to have an asshole on Friday the 13th.
Travis Van Winkle was awesome.
Which he did a wonderful
He was
job.
so good. He was so good.
And there's Jason's going after him. He's trying to get away desperately, and Jason ends up taking them and putting them on those iron spikes in the back of that truck, and the truck starts driving. And in our original script, Trent still had his gun, so he has his kind of feeble arm, and he raises it up, and as he's being pulled off on these spikes, he starts blasting at Jason, and we're seeing...
And Jason's just standing in the street, just staring after him, and like, pew, pew, like bullet shots getting all around him, but just never moves.
Yeah, but...
it would have been so good.
Yeah, but you got to pay a squib guy.
You got to pay a squib, and it's like, now we're here for another hour. They had already done roofing for us.
I would have paid the squib guy.
I know. Come on, guys. Actually, let me take an opportunity to say, Brad and Drew, the producers from Platinum Dunes, did an amazing job. I mean, not easy to marshal all that, to get it on time, on schedule, on budget. I mean, those guys are excellent producers, and they fought for the movie too. They really did. But you know, you can't create more days. You know, this isn't a Star Wars movie. This isn't a Marvel where you can just shoot forever with unlimited amounts of money. You know, it's just not that kind of movie.
Yeah, and we're just grateful that they invited us on that trip with them.
Yeah, I mean, it was a blast, and I hope you kids like it.
Freeze frame. That was a freeze frame?
Freeze framed it. First of all, I think some fans know, not all, that we were hired to write a sequel. Originally, it was going to be set in the snow for the entire movie. And then we had some meetings with the studio, with the producers, and they said, listen, that's very expensive. You're going to really drive the cost up. So then it became an extended opening again like we had last time, and that would be in the winter. And so we wrote the script, and I mean, the script turned out great. And then the idea was after winter, and by the way, in the beginning, we would see frozen under Crystal Lake. We would see Whitney Miller dead. So, spoiler. And then we were going to reopen the summer camp, which had not been done since the very beginning. And so we were going to focus, the characters were going to be counselors. And then...
of course, we were going to bring back the infamous Tommy Jarvis.
You heard it here first. We were bringing back Tommy Jarvis. I think we were calling him TJ, like some of the characters didn't know.
And then it's a reveal. We see a bit of his backstory as a kid, a horrible moment where Jason kills his mom.
In the first draft, we actually had the idea that Tommy Jarvis had escaped mental institution, and he was using some of the camp counselors, like he ties them up and uses them as bait to bring Jason in, because he had like a master plan. It was so good. But overall, the idea for the sequel was bigger kills. Just everything was more elaborate. I mean, we had a kill where a kid. It's a long part of the story, but like a kid gets slipped acid, and so he's tripping and he sees Jason, coming for him, and like Jason's mask was stretching with like long teeth. I mean, like we had some really wild stuff.
Yeah, it was cool, and unfortunately, there are a lot of legal issues with the franchise right now. There's 2 studios that battling over it. There's all kinds of copyright issues. So it's in a mess. But we know Jason survives anything, even the courts.
Jason will be back. Jason will kill a judge. He will hire a lawyer. Whatever he's got to do, he will definitely come back from the dead. I can assure you of that. But we would love to be involved. But at some point, the torch has to be passed, to the next generation of writers. What's their take on it?
Yeah.
Maybe when they saw Freddy vs. Jason when they were a kid. I mean, we get a lot of fan mail. People come up to us on the street. I'm not even joking. They just, they love Freddy vs. Jason. So where's that filmmaker, and what would he or she do now with the character? So I would love to see it. But Jason Voorhees, like Death and Taxes, not going away.
We're always banging our heads about how do you create that new iconic killer, that slasher that's going to be for now, for today.
I do wonder if the culture has moved past the point of slasher movies. I don't think that they're necessarily as popular with, say, Gen Z. But then again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that it's just sort of needs to be rediscovered.
But everything goes in cycles, right? So Gen Double Z is going to love.
It's up to you, Double Z.
Let's go, Double Z. We're waiting.
I would love to do another sequel to The Thing. Bring back Kurt Russell.
Holy mouse.
That's
big game talk right there.
That is big game talk. Look.
Rob Bottin, you're talking about.
I bring back Rob Bottin. John Carpenter, obviously, is directing it. Come on. But get back to those effects that they did. We love The Thing more than any movie. Well, that's not true.
It's way up there.
It's way up there.
Yeah.
But I just love that world, love those characters. I would love to see a great another chapter to the thing. How about you? Anything, any franchise. What is it?
A horror franchise. You know what? I wouldn't mind another crack at the reinvention of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Take that in a fresh way. Here's the thing about the dreams. Now with our technology and what we could do and really make it spooky, dreamlike, you know, I think you could do some new, fresh things. You'd have to find really a great...
But you have to have Robert Englund.
But you could use Robert Englund in a way where he doesn't have to put on the makeup every day, you know? He would be the voice. He would be the soul of it.
You pick your spots for him. I mean, it's always been like Jaws for me. You know, the less Freddy is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, you play up the tension, but Robert has to be involved. To me, you know, I don't think you can separate Robert Englund from Nightmare on Elm Street. So for me, he would have to be involved.
I'm sure he's fine with that.
Is he? I hope so. I do think that horror fans are sort of the smartest, usually most
loyal,
and well, they know their stuff. I mean, you know, you talk to different fan bases and they're kind of but horror fans are experts, and so you can't cheat them.
No, and
you gotta do it right.
And they want to know everything about it. They want to know the behind-the-scenes stories. They study the stuff. This Friday 13th, 2009, is the best looking Friday 13th that's ever been.
It's beautiful looking, and that's all Marcus and Daniel Pearl. I mean, they just absolutely shot the hell out of it. I mean, it's and people have to realize this is not a big budget movie. I mean, they didn't have a lot of days, they didn't have a lot of money, and it looks as good as it does because of those guys.
For sure.
Yeah, Michael was always very cool to us. Actually, I'm getting a phone call right now.
Oh, hi, Mr. Bay.
This is actually Michael calling us. This will be good. Hey, Michael. No, you wouldn't believe who we're talking to. Yes. No, that's fine. We did. Sir, yes, sir. It's terrible. So
that's
stupid.
Gonna be,
that's going to be cut.
It's going to be in the outtakes of
That's going to be after the credits.
Good Lord.
All right.